Thanks, Evan. So you probably have guessed that I am Filip. I was the business architect on the program, but I tried to turn it into less of a traditional business architect role and more of a innovation coach role. And I learned to got to know Karen on the project as well.
Yeah, we worked together for about 18 months on the project we will share the story about, and I work as an organizational development specialist and coach. So we had different topics to tackle. And the story we want to share with you is a story about a corporate organization who had an idea for some time to create a new business, but was not an easy thing to do because it crossed all kind of boundaries. It went over several business units and brands of the group, which made it rather complicated. I want to emphasize before we start that it's our story. We both are external to the Colruyt Group. We are not part of it, but we tried to bring Tom, the business owner, along, which was not possible, but I interviewed him last week, and you will meet him in some video snapshots from an interview during our presentation. So I know there's one Belgian in the room. Maybe there are more people from Belgium in the room. Yes, okay. So for those, I don't need to introduce the company because, as Ewan said, it's the #1 retailer in Belgium, but not outside of Belgium, except in France a little bit. It's a company that exists for 80 years. It's family-owned still and listed. It's a very value-driven company. The values really live inside of the company, and they employ about 30,000 people in 3 countries. And they are active in several brands, going from a discounter to organic food, to toys, to baby articles, and they even have their own academy for consumers, not only for their employees, but for consumers, and they produce their own green energy, which they also sell, so they became an green energy provider.
Yeah, and as Karen said, they have values, and the values are important to them. Any company has values, and any company says the values are important to them. But here, as an external consultant, I can say it's basically the only company I've worked for that I really felt it. For example, work-life balance, they really think it's important, so they do not allow working from home. Instead, they experiment with having a bus where you can work from comfortably during your commute. So you can argue about whether or not that's a good solution, but it shows the focus on giving people that work-life balance. It's also a company that's being able to survive for 80 years, has done a lot of innovations, small innovations, smartphone apps, making their own products and stuff like that. They also have a checkout system where the cashier actually fills your bags for you, even though it's a very cost-conscious organization. So they try to experiment, they try to do things differently, yet still we had quite a few challenges to overcome during this new business venture.
Okay. So we've chosen to share the story with you, picking 4 scenes over the period of about 2 years, 18 months, 2 years. And we would like to use those 4 snapshots to share some dilemmas and tensions we encountered and the lessons we've learned from them. And the first one is called Bootcamp. Bootcamp is a symbol for this project because, as in many large corporations, they have processes for everything, so they also have a process to establish a new strategy. It's a process that takes some time, several workshops with a slow pace, and we choose to do it differently. We choose to organize a bootcamp for 3 days. 15 people were invited from several business units, but all of them had a special interest for the new idea. And we work together from early morning to late at night with very interactive, creative sessions, avoiding all endless blah blah discussions. And we ended up with a lot of energy after the 3 days. We had a vision, a mission, and ambitions. And we had some tangible new value propositions at the end. But what we did wrong in hindsight is that we didn't have a clear momentum before the start. We had no dedicated team who could take everything forward right after the bootcamp. There was Tom, and there was me, and some other supporting guy from business architecture, if I remember right, and that was it. All the rest was volunteering, combining with their main jobs, which made it quite difficult to take it forward after the bootcamp. So that's one of the lessons we learned, and that had an impact on strategy. And Tom will explain to you a little bit later in the video why a precise strategy was really important, and it was not razor sharp enough when we closed the bootcamp. And so you could say that we missed a little bit our zero moment of truth by doing it in this way from our enthusiasm.
Once you have your team, it's important to make a clear strategy and to sharpen the strategy, because this clear strategy will help you further in your journey. No clear strategy for sure will block you further. Once you have that strategy, it's important to also communicate it to your stakeholders and also to get a clear validation of the sponsor of the assignment. Next to that, it's important that in the process you go to keep the number of decision makers as small as possible, for sure in corporate organizations, and be as transparent about who takes the decisions. Decide up front who and how you will make those decision processes clear. Keep the lines also very short in decision taking, and know up front the escalation path you want to take to get a quick decision, and be transparent about it with your co-workers and stakeholders.
Okay, let's fast forward. And I need to fast forward if I look at the clock. We go 8 months later, we have a dedicated business team, and we also have a large IT team. And sorry to put them aside like that, but it was reality, because we had a lot of interdependencies with a new IT platform that was going to be built. And what we encountered was that the business team ended up worrying about the next gate review for the program governance instead of worrying about what's our next learning iteration we went through. And at one time, we couldn't neglect the tension that provoked anymore. And we really have taken a time out with the business team, and I invited them to reflect on using the boat as a metaphor, what gives you wind in the sails and what holds you back. And to do so, you could say it was a kind of health check. We did it several times. It was not the only time we did it. And to do so, you also have to create a very safe space. I will dive into that a little bit more later.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me was that there are quite a lot of things that were holding us back or holding the team back. And reflecting upon it afterwards, I think a lot of these things are actually in the minds of people. There are perceptions of hurdles, but not real hurdles. For example, typically in this large organization, decisions are made by consensus. It takes a lot of time. You have to involve everyone for every little thing. It doesn't work in an intrapreneurial environment. But in reality, people have the habit of making decisions like that, but no one forces you to do so. So in hindsight, we should have challenged people more often on what they think are hurdles rather than accepting them. Challenge them, is it really a hurdle? And can we move beyond it? Can we move past it?
So as I said, it's important to create a safe space for this to be happening. And that's not an easy thing, but we try to encourage it so that it was easy for people to say what was bothering them, but also to be taken seriously and to be trusted by the fact that they knew best what could be a good solution to encounter the difficulties they had. And one learning in hindsight is that safe space was not only important for the team, but me as Tom's coach, consultant, I also had to offer him a safe space, because what I learned last week is that you can never underestimate what it does to someone who needs to really accept risk and uncertainty and at the same time lead a team. When I invited him for the interview, apparently I've sent our story to him 1 year, day by day, after the ending of the project. And he really said, "What did you do?" I went to every emotion all over again, and it was not an easy thing for me, even after 1 year. So I had to be more present.
One of the things that also helped us really in this area was the creation of golden rules, but that's something that Tom will talk about in this next video.
So you have your team, you have your strategy, and then you will start to realize it. It's not because you have selected the skilled people that they will work as a team. So dare to invest in team dynamics. Put all co-workers also on the project together in one working place. Mix business and IT to make it work end to end. Create as a team also your golden rules as a touchstone of how we want to work together and set expectations right. Include a good decision-taking process. It will free up the energy and gives people also the opportunity to take up responsibility. Before going into realization, create also a common purpose. While teams are building up, other people come in, and everybody should really breathe the business vision.
Starting from that vision, what a lot of companies try to do, in my experience, is try to do some research, some analysis up front, hoping they can predict the future. They can think about, design the right business value proposition, the right solution, and that it will be a success if you think about it long and hard enough. So if we talk about customer validation, that's also the main approach that we had taken here. A lot of customer validation was done through market research, customer interviews, surveys, stuff like that, which is useful. But when we did a first experiment, a first real experiment, very small, putting a link online between two brands and measuring the results, we actually got a positive result that was much more positive than we expected. And we learned from that whatever you learn up front, but not in real life, is just willingness or intention. Whatever you learn in the field is, of course, real behavior. So that's much more valuable. And because it's real figures, it's also much more actionable for people in the team. We also learned that it's very useful to have the team experience this customer feedback rather than have an external party outsource to an external party perform those customer validations, because then you don't feel it yourself how the customer thinks and behave. So don't outsource that feedback loop, but integrate it within the daily ritual of the team. You would expect that this experiment will be a trigger to perform these kinds of validations on a continuous or iterative basis. Unfortunately, there were a lot of constraints, perceived or not. For example, the fear of changing things in the organization, technical difficulties to set up experiments, fear of reputational damage potentially. And those hurdles led us not to go forward with true customer-driven validation all the time within the team. Something that I realized afterwards is that answering this concern by helping people to think about how to perform an experiment is not answering the real question. The deeper question is, how can you make it safe for people to perform an experiment? Performing such an experiment is about going outside to the customer with an idea that's very rough. It's like standing in front of the customer naked, and it's really out of the comfort zone for a lot of people. If you've done it a few times, it becomes a habit, but for many people it's very out of the comfort zone, so you have to think together with them how to make it safe for them to start that customer validation process and to get good results. So how to make it safe is a second takeaway for this. What can help with this, we think, is a focus on deep listening.
Deep listening are skills that maybe some of you are familiar, that come out of the theory U thinking by Otto Scharmer. Deep listening skills means that you are able, when you are entering a dialogue with your stakeholders or your customers, to really take in the feedback and not listening by your own filters, by your own beliefs, but really listening and being able to put aside all your judgment. So being able to listen without fear of, without your voice of fear, without your voice of judgment, and without your voice of cynicism. In hindsight, it might have been a good idea to train those people in deep listening skills beforehand. Okay, so as I told you earlier, when I explained how it went with the interview with Tom, about a year ago, we received the message that the project was going to be ended. It was not a complete surprise to everyone, but on the other hand, the people were still very enthusiastic, very keen on working on what we're doing. So it was not an easy message to take in, and we decided of doing something with that. Coincidentally, there was a team day planned 2 days after the message was received, and we took the time to really digest the message. And as you know, we are all different, so that kind of message, like you have to roll off this project, and who knows what you will be doing next week or in 2 weeks. We offered several techniques for people to digest the message, to take it in, and after lunch we sat together again with the business team, and an amazing thing happened. There was really a source of resilience that kicked in, and in half an hour time they drafted up a list with everything they have learned, they have done the past 2 years, all their insights, and what they want to share with the other departments of the group. And they came up with the idea of a TED Talk style knowledge fair, and after a couple of weeks that was already up and running, and they shared within the company everything they learned during this project, which gave them a lot of recognition and acknowledgement and avoided them to go into the feeling of failure and feeling ashamed and small. They really had built up some energy and they showed resilience. And we show you this picture of one of the team members. It's Elisa, and you can see on her face she has a genuine smile. It's taken on the day of the brainstorming for the knowledge fair, and so 2 days after the message. And she was during a break running to a magazine, and she showed me this quote. And for me it meant, well, what I did here, I really loved it. But even if I'm disappointed now, that does not mean that I can't do what I like to do in life. And after a couple of weeks, just as all the other team members, she found herself a new job within the group, integrating and implementing every learning she had from the 18 months before. She didn't wait for HR to do so.
Yeah. So in conclusion, a few of the takeaways that we feel are really important that we are applying in our next projects as well. The first one is set the scene. It's something you have to do up front, especially in large organizations. Making course corrections can be really hard. So before you do that kickoff in the form of a bootcamp or something else, make sure that you have a dedicated, small but dedicated team that can move forward, leveraging the energy that you experience in that kickoff. That's a key thing that we took away.
A second thing is related to frustration. As you might have been noticed in our story, we encountered sometimes tension and frustration, and it's a symptom of tension, and tension is a source of energy. And what we've tried to do is turn that energy into something people could act upon, and preferably something positive. And there I noticed that it's very important to trust the process and to trust the people that eventually whatever goes wrong, they will take something out of it, as long as you keep them in charge of also thinking about what might help them and what their needs are.
Part of it is also, I think, preventing frustration. If I look at my own role, was I a business architect in the traditional way? Was I an innovation coach? Was I a coach in the program, or was I an actor that was participating in business, operational stuff, or in the future business potentially? That wasn't really clear up front, which made it kind of difficult for me to find out how I fit in. And that creates frustration rather than being able to prepare yourself better on beforehand. And a third thing that I definitely take up every day now is make it small. Small teams, small scope, strong focus. If you feel that you are getting success, that you're getting traction, don't grow the team, but grow the number of teams. Don't make one team larger, but create more small teams. Try to make the teams independent of each other, but focus your energy on doing that, on cutting the dependencies, rather than trying to make a bigger team work well. Making it small is also a matter of taking small steps. For example, at one point in time, we were discussing a potential experiment to validate some hypotheses on customer behavior. And there were quite a few discussions. Are we measuring the right thing? Are we trying to perform the experiment in the right way? And at some point in time, one of the business people said, actually, I don't care what we measure. I don't care how we do the experiment. I just want to get started. I want to take this first small step in making experimentation a daily habit. So take small steps. And putting things together, I realize now that I don't believe in these big corporate programs. I do believe that you have to, right from the start, see them as a portfolio of initiatives that are somehow related, but that you try to manage as independent initiatives as much as possible. And so finally, there is also one more takeaway from Tom.
And a final suggestion I want to give to you all is don't mix innovation and transformation goals in one project. The risk of failure by mixing them both is too high because they need other processes of governance. What helps innovation is too light for transformation, and what helps transformation blocks innovation. So dare to make a good choice. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.